This is the bi-weekly meeting of the Storage Special Interest Group. Today is December 8, 2016. As a reminder, this meeting is public and recorded. On the agenda today, we're going to talk about what we're going to do in 2017 and in Q1. Kind of go just brainstorm and come up with a wish list of everything that we want. We can do that last. Let's go through all the other agenda items first. So first up, a status update on things that have been going on in storage. Right now, we are finishing up 1.5. 1.50 is scheduled to go out on Monday. From the storage end, Jing got a couple of changes in last minute. So one was the containerized mounter change that went into 1.5 and is being backported to 1.47. That's going to enable NFS and GlusterFS on GKE. On GCI images. And the second change was a workaround for the NFS wedging issue. Basically, she kind of rolled back partially one of her changes that broke Seth's change. And hopefully that'll ease the pain of the NFS wedging issue a little bit. And I see that at the bottom, Jan and Huamin added a few items. Jan or Huamin, you guys want to talk about this?
Yes, so I just talked to Jan is not here today, so I just talked on his behalf.
I am here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Maybe Jan can go ahead. I have food in my mouth.
A couple of days ago, I filled an PR that makes remove all much safer. We had a bug that remove all accidentally removed user data. And I would like to get some feedback, preferably from Jingzu, if she's there.
She is there, and we'll both take a look at it.
Yeah, this could make Kube much safer.
You want to give an overview of what it does?
Well, what it does, I copied remove all from Golang standard library, and I made sure that it doesn't cross mount boundary. So
nice.
It calls the stat on a directory and the parent directory, and if the file system is different, then it gives up and throws an error, and that's it.
You're going to modify all references of remove all to use that?
Yeah,
nice.
Most of them.
All right, that's a really, really nice change. Cool.
And the second one, some guy on Slack asked me to have the possibility to configure ReclaimPolicy in a storage class, and I got few, let's say 2 requests from somebody from Red Hat that they would like something for that for their customers too. So I have 3 people who wants to configure ReclaimPolicy. Huamin pointed out that some people want to configure also file system that is created on dynamically provisioned volumes. So do you know any other parameter that should be configurable, and do we have enough interest in this configuration of storage classes?
So by configurable reclaim policy, what you mean is that right now when dynamic volumes are dynamically provisioned, they by default get the delete retain policy.
Yes.
And so they're deleted. So folks want to not have their dynamically provisioned volumes deleted.
Yes, some people don't trust their users because they will delete their PVCs and they will complain then they have no data.
Right. I'll take a look at that PR, but it does sound like a useful feature.
It's just an issue.
Okay.
But the code is trivial.
Got it. So I think it makes sense as something that we should fix. We're going to have to take a look at how or where we want it to fit into the API.
Exactly. And if we have any other parameters that should be configurable, this is now a good time to add them.
Any other comments on that? Sorry, were you saying something, Jan?
Well, that is all from me.
All right, cool.
Just add one thing on metrics. So far we don't have any metrics in the volume manager or just controller. The idea is that sometimes we get troubles on latencies we don't really capture, and we don't really have good ideas how they perform. So adding metrics will give us some ideas what is going on. I think the implementation is trivial. It's just what we want to add, that is important. So I do need
what kind of metrics already exist in the system?
On the pod level, there's a lot. Startup latencies, the number of pods created, but nothing related to volume manager, just
cool.
volume controllers.
That would be useful. How do you view these metrics at the moment? Prometheus?
Yes.
Got it.
Got it.
Cool. Yeah, no, that would be awesome.
So I just want to get a collective input on what we want to, take. What could be a metrics? So we want to see the volume attached timeouts, what latency, deleted latency, and the management layers, things like that.
Feels like all the operations that we have in Operation Executor, mount, unmount, attach, detach, create, delete, should all have metrics in terms of how long they're taking to execute, whether they were successful or they failed. If they failed, what reason they failed for, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We probably cannot get the reasons, but we can capture the failures just by counters. The exact message has to go to events.
Mm-hmm. Sure, that's a good start. So I think this kind of is a good segue into our big topic for today, which is coming up with a wish list of what we want for pretty much all of 2017. Just a brainstorming session, and then maybe we could whittle that down into what we want for Q1 for the 1.6 release. I'm going to hand it over to Matt. Matt is a PM on, he works on both networking and storage here at Google. So it's really awesome to have him working with us. Matt?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having time for us to do this. So I put down some of the things I thought of. I don't know if we have them pasted into the, let me paste them into the, I'm not sure this is going to paste properly, but we'll see. So some of the things that I put down on my list were the following. So I pasted it just in the chat window. So I think, one of the things that we found is at the face-to-face meeting, we need to have a good strategy for doing out-of-tree volume drivers, as well as the ability to push everybody out of the tree, and then also to mount pull in drivers at runtime. And so that's a big part of what I think we should be working on. The other thing that we've been thinking about internally, and maybe a little bit externally as well, is making sure that we only schedule pods on nodes that support given volume types. So, for example, we ran into an issue with our own internal image with mounting certain volume drivers volume types because we did not have the driver or the binaries installed on the system. So having a way to kind of automatically figure that out and make sure that we're only scheduling on nodes that support certain volume types, I think is something we want to work on as well. A few other kind of maybe big things that we could think about are snapshots, data replication in general. I think we got some stabilization stuff with support to AWS, EBS volumes. Local storage support, I think, is going to be a big thing in the future because people want to take advantage of SSDs and other media that are on their local system. And I think the last one I had was mount option pass-through. So, I mean, these are just starters. I think we should kind of, I'm happy to kind of take notes and write down other ideas that we have. And I think we can revisit maybe figuring out priorities later. I think if we want to talk about that a little bit now, I'm happy to do that. But I think more, I just want to solicit ideas and kind of see where we are. And then we can talk about where we want to end up in 2017, maybe in a later meeting. So with that, yeah, I'm happy to take ideas and write them down, and I'd love to hear from all of you.
I think, this is Steve White, I think it might behoove us to actually have a separate document where folks can, it's like a Google Doc where folks can add ideas and sort of think about this over like a week or so.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe expand on them, because I think, Red Hat at least has lots of ideas around here and thoughts on the relative prioritization of them, but I don't have them in my back pocket right now.
Okay.
So if I was to throw stuff out, I'd probably be forgetting a thing or two.
Okay. Would it? I mean, would it make sense to do anything now? Then, or are you saying you'd rather just do it all via doc?
Well, I think we got the quorum here, so I mean, we can talk about a few of the ideas. I just don't think you'd get the whole shebang, right? I mean, for me, I think like containerized, client mount drivers, mount propagation is pretty important to our out of tree goals. I think I agree. Out of tree volume plugins super high on the list. Snapshotting and replication, I think, is going to be non-trivial. Like, I think we first have to come to consensus on what those things mean and why we would do them. And we've spoken a little bit about that at the face-to-face that we had in Seattle. But there's sort of tactical needs around backups and things like that, which is one reason why you do them. And then there's more strategic reasons why you might do them for application portability, right? And so that's absolutely buy into that. But I think we need to talk about why we're doing it and how that factors into a design that we may come up with. But those are a couple of thoughts right off the top of my head. I'm not sure what other folks in the SIG think.
Yeah, I think with regard to replication and snapshots, that in order to get stuff moving, we're going to have to stage that, because we've been kicking around snapshots for at least 9 months, I think. And there's a risk here that every time the subject comes out, people keep embellishing it, adding on backups and application consistency. And in reality, it's going to have to be done staged. And some aspects of it reflect right through to the volume plugins, like, for example, simply triggering the snapshot. But others, like doing the backups, I don't think should be bundled with the volume plugin interface. And it will help focus these discussions if we keep those separate. So kind of the minimal thing we could perhaps shoot for 2017 would be simply a mechanism that's a pass-through, asking a storage provider to do a snapshot, and kind of avoid the temptation to go into the whole thing of layering on all the stuff you'd use it for and try to tack it on, because I think we're likely to just spend meeting after meeting talking about it and not get anything done. Replication is kind of the same thing, where in a big picture, one form of replication is just doing it within the same Kubernetes cluster in the same physical location. But doing it across geo regions is something customers would really like. But if we, from the get-go, expand the discussion to have all of that going on, I think all we'll end up doing is talking about it and get nothing built.
And Matt, have you gone through the face-to-face notes to pull down any action items or topics from that as well? I mean, we've gone through several meetings in the past that have good information about prioritization from those face-to-face. It would be good to just kind of lift and port those rather than lose any of the discussions, because someone might not be on this call and know to add that.
Okay, I'll do that. I haven't pulled down the notes right now, but I will.
Okay, and within those notes, I think one of the sticklers for me is if we move all the volumes out of tree, we need a way of certifying the volumes for some sort of minimal functionality that they must, pass through, and it has to be like a shared test environment of some kind in which we're able to say that these are out of tree, but they are working well at a minimum level. I think that's important.
I agree. Yeah, that's a very big part of that whole effort. So yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Matt, are you keeping notes on the agenda doc?
I've started a new doc that I'm going to
link to it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Huamin posted in the doc resize and quota 2.
Okay. I'll probably copy those over with the new doc, and then
sure.
I'll paste a link later today into this this meeting and agenda notes, and I'll send something to the storage SIG, so have everyone kind of jump in and add their thoughts.
Tom posted in the chat encryption. So encryption is one that comes up a lot, and I wonder if this is something that Kubernetes necessarily needs to be aware of, or if it's something that should be left to the storage system itself. I think this is a question that we kind of ask for a lot of features that are asked, does it make sense in Kubernetes? And I think the way that I think about it is, if there is a consistent set of actions that apply regardless of the underlying implementation, then it makes sense for Kubernetes to expose an API for that particular action. For example, for snapshots, it does make sense that there should be a way to be able to trigger snapshots, list snapshots, delete snapshots, and hopefully restore a snapshot onto a particular volume. There may be other sets of actions that are involved with snapshotting, but that basic minimal set is something that all snapshotting systems should be capable of doing, and therefore something that kind of makes sense for Kubernetes to expose in its API. For encryption, I wonder if that's the case, and I don't know enough about how various encryption systems for storage work.
Serge Pashenko from Cluster HQ. Well, at the very least, you want to have a policy that certain data does not get on unencrypted places. And that's a placement policy that Kubernetes controls.
So far Kubernetes hasn't gotten into the business of controlling the data, basically. All it does is make storage available. So this would be a new paradigm.
Correct, but still, you place the data, for instance, in things like pet set controllers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you need to, well, at least that's the way I'm thinking about it as far as data stewardship. Certain data is not allowed to be stored and encrypted.
Right. So I guess confidential data, we have the secret mechanism of Kubernetes to be able to move that around within the Kubernetes system. And the data that an application persists onto whatever storage system is available. And it feels to me like that storage system is responsible for figuring out and doing the encryption for that data. I'm not sure what it would mean for Kubernetes to be aware of the encryption of that storage system. Is there anything that Kubernetes needs to do? Because I'm thinking about GCEPDs, for example. And when this first came up, we realized, well, there's actually nothing Kubernetes needs to do. It's encrypted by default, and the storage system takes care of it.
Yeah, I think, Serge, I think, right? The way we have it now is we have provisioners, and provisioners have parameters depending on the provisioner interface. So like the one I know a little bit better is the EBS one, and EBS has like an encrypted, flag, Boolean, true, false sort of thing. So if that's set, then when you submit a claim against that storage class associated with that provisioner, it'll auto encrypt the disk for you. And the way that's used in pet sets is, in the pet set spec, that you can submit passing claims to be used with, the stateful set, right? So for each pod in the stateful set, we'll use a particular claim. Those claims point to a storage class, and those, whatever the storage class params are set to, that's what the claim will get. So that's sort of how I see everything tied in here. I guess what we're asking is, what about that is insufficient?
It's a good question. I need to process what you just said.
I will also say, like, I had a meeting with a person, a customer in the FSI space, a bank, yesterday, and they're using Kubernetes. And there's, I was like, yeah, Kubernetes has encryption. And they laughed. They're like, oh, yeah, it's got on-disk encryption, but like I need all these other encryptions too, which I've never heard of, don't know anything about those use cases, things like that. And so like the on-disk encryption to them is just the start. So it would be kind of interesting for us to like poll a few folks that actually work in the banking industry around like, what other, like on the wire encryption and other types of encryption they need for us just to get a handle on like the end-to-end use case for like stuff that needs to be encrypted.
Understood. I was just like yourself. I was thinking on disk encryption, basically data at rest.
Right. Yeah. Apparently, there's more to it.
Certainly.
Luis mentioned in the chat, I'm not sure if my mic is working, but I agree that this does not sound like it should be done in Kube. Luis, we can't hear you, but we got your comment. Someone named npramod message saying, is there a plan for convergence of Flex and out of tree in 2017? I'm not sure if there's a plan, but there's a hope.
The goal for sure, yeah. Just for folks, it's communicating more broadly, right? There's like a number of different specs out there that I think one of the things we're starting to observe is that it's like really good that people are talking to each other now. Like there seems to be, the communities are starting to come together, right? So we have lib storage folks. So Steve Wong's been a long time participant in the SIG. We starting to get some engagement, I think mainly through Tim Harkin with the Docker folks. And then, I think the Cloud Foundry and the, what's the other one? Mesos folks, I think are, somewhat engaged already with lib storage. And then, there's another consortium which is OpenSDS, which is sort of largely driven by Huawei, and they're also coming to chat to us about this. So I think like that's pretty positive. Like everybody's coming together. It doesn't seem like there's any sort of loaded agendas. It's just more interest in some sort of out of tree spec that we can all build to that's broadly applicable. And so like consensus, even though it's not really an engineering thing, I think in the critical path of sort of arriving at this spec. But, as a SIG, I think we really have started to pay a lot more attention to the out of tree story and flex volume as part of that. And we don't like have like a bullet by bullet like roadmap of it, but I would say it's like floated up really high to the top of the SIG's priorities for next year.
Yep, completely agreed.
I presume that includes dynamic provisioning as well?
So with dynamic provisioning, we have the external provisioner spec that's already been merged, and there's an exemplar implementation of that. So if you want to do external provisioners, you can do that today, right? Yeah. We've had entry provisioners for a while now. Saad, the bit that confuses me, honestly, is like, so we've got Jan's like latest external provisioner stuff, but I've heard rumors, mainly because I haven't tracked it that actively, but I thought there's some talk about doing provisioning in the Flex proposal too, which I was a bit confused because we already have the external provisioner stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's for Flex, it's just a matter of mirroring the internal API. So when the actual create call happens, the implementation for that specific driver needs to get called out to something. And so if you implement a storage driver through Flex, you should be able to provide a provisioner as part of that implementation. And so that's what the Flex API would do.
So if you had an external provisioner, you could just use it.
Right. So if you provided a Flex driver for whatever storage system, along with that driver, you specify what the provisioner is, and it comes as the bundle along with how to attach, mount, unmount works.
Got it.
I understand that there is a proposal from Chapri from Diamante. There's a PR with extensions to Flex.
Yeah, I think Brad is leading that effort in Chakri's absence, who I believe is on vacation during the holidays. Brad, do you want to comment on that?
Sure, he's been in and out. He's actually been doing some of the development on it too. So the plan was to get attach detach to work for the immediate, 1617 time frame, and then push some of the extra features out past that. So any provisioning or any, we talked about snapshots, we talked about a bunch of different things that we could add to Flex in the future. We would move that stuff to, probably after 1.6. So the big push was to get attach detach logic into the Flex driver using the current exec model. And I think they've closed a couple pull requests that had some extra features in it and are just concentrating on the attach detach logic right now. And that's moving along. I think it's getting close, but it's not in pull requests quite yet.
All right, so I think it feels like what the big items are definitely the mechanisms for moving storage out of tree. Flex is going to be our first step towards that, but we're going to have a parallel story of what we eventually want this to look like. That's going to take a large part of 2017 to figure out, design, implement. Beyond that, it looks like there's still interest in expanding the feature set for Kubernetes. So snapshots, data replication, local storage support are all on the wish list of what we'd like to accomplish. And then, of course, stabilization is something that's an ongoing effort. It's going to be part of all the existing volume plugins, increasing test coverage, like Aaron pointed out, if we had some sort of certification mechanism for volume plugins, and especially now that we're considering out of tree, we have to be very, very careful about what the upgrade stories look like for folks and version mismatch and things like that. It'll be easier for our vendors to be able to develop volume plugins, but it'll be a little bit more difficult for our users, so we need to keep that in mind. And then we've got smaller items, things like considering how to do mount option pass-through. So Matt's going to go ahead and capture all these ideas in a doc, and he's going to send it out to the Storage SIG mailing group, and folks feel free to add to that. The next meeting we have is going to be very close to Christmas. I imagine we're not going to have too many folks there. The meeting after that, I believe, is the 4th of January. And that meeting we can use as a planning session for Q1 2016 for 1.6. How does that sound to everyone? Cool, got a thumbs up from Steve.
Maybe, yeah, just to add on to that. So probably either in this doc or in a separate doc, maybe we can solicit ideas specifically for Q1, maybe as part of the other doc, and just maybe we'll be a little bit of duplication. Maybe we'll just put the headlines in what we think we should be working on for Q1. That way we at least have something that we can speak to on the 4th. Yeah, I'll make sure it's clear in the document when I write that up.
Yeah, it would be nice to just use the same doc. If we have too many docs, it gets hard to follow.
I agree, yeah.
There's a question in the group chat. Is there a tentative date for the face-to-face in Q1? I don't think there is at the moment. Do we want to? We just had one in November. What do folks think?
I think maybe later in Q1, as we start to focus this wish list for 2017, maybe to arrive at a final agreement as to what the goals are, a face-to-face would be useful. And I don't know what the perspective of the guests were, but Dell EMC thought that the meeting in Seattle was worthwhile, and we'd like to offer to host another one in Santa Clara, which might be a better location. I mean, Seattle was good since the conference was there, but I think Santa Clara is a more central location where a lot of people are local to the area. So we've got a similar meeting space, an executive briefing center located there that could host the meeting.
Awesome. And yeah, late Q1, early Q2 sounds good to me. I think we'll have more details about exactly what we want to do. So it'd be good to use that as a springboard. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think these face-to-faces are super valuable. They're like the lifeblood of like getting stuff done in the SIG. And I think though, like they could still be improved. Like I think that like we tend to be a bit ad hoc on the agenda for these things, which I think has the potential for some folks to show up hoping stuff will get discussed or resolved, and it doesn't happen because you have to prioritize. And I think like one of the things we could do with that, so love the idea. I think we should go meet at that time at the location Steve's suggesting. I think though what we could do is like be a bit tighter on the agenda and say like, look, these are these key things that we need to discuss. Like we should have them like as well worked out in the community in design proposals, etc. before, and then like the meeting is used as like the final consensus for those type of things. Kind of like what we did with beta for dynamic provisioning. Like, you know, we had that stuff fully threshed out, and then like we had everyone in the room, everybody's attention, and we just, you know, closed it out, and we actually covered that really quickly. Yeah. So we should obviously embrace ad hoc ideas as well and try and cover those. But like, I think if we try and do the due diligence beforehand to, you know, so that we can, you know, really move through the stuff a lot faster and cover more, to be better.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. I completely agree. I think one of our most useful meetings was the one where we hammered out the details of dynamic provisioning. And like you said, it was one of those issues that had been languishing for a while. A lot of the basics were agreed upon, but the fine details were not. And these kinds of meetings were very, very useful to finalize on those. So if we have the agenda set ahead of time for the next face-to-face, and just focus the discussion a lot, I think we get a lot more out of it. All right, cool. Anything else on the agenda?
Hi, this is Ritesh here. I just joined a bit late. When is the face-to-face planned?
So at the moment we said we're thinking late Q1, early Q2. No date has been finalized yet. We'll probably figure that out early Q1.
Okay, thank you. I had a question if somebody is willing to take it up. So we have a cloud provider from VMware, and one of the feedbacks we keep getting is everybody uses their own deployment scripts when it's on-premise, and they are asking for documentation. And the documentation today is not organized on a per cloud provider basis. They are getting started guides and there's kind of how to use Kubernetes. But if you want to configure and features supported by a cloud provider, it's kind of, what's the recommendation there?
So I think the doc SIG would probably be a better place to ask this question. My understanding is that the docs need a lot of work. They're working on it at the moment. I'm not sure what their plans are for cloud-specific instructions. But yeah, I'd follow up with the doc SIG. Anyone else on this call have any ideas?
Well, I'd say that across cloud providers, it isn't very uniform in terms of deploying a Kubernetes cluster to a public cloud. So if you're expecting some facade in front that makes them look alike, as far as I know, it doesn't exist. Personally, I think I like Kelsey Hightower's Kubernetes the hard way, just to understand how to do it yourself. I mean, some of the things that would do it, like the cloud formation, yes, you can get one there, but for troubleshooting and understanding it, you won't be knowledgeable about the moving pieces. And if you're a developer, which I think a lot of the people in this community are in that category, it isn't going to work well for you.
So yeah, I might reach out to, go look at the contributors for the previous cloud providers and reach out to them personally and see if you can get some help that way.
Thank you.
Might be a good question to ask at the community meeting as well. That's going on at 10 o'clock today. All right, cool. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, great. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Everybody have a good day.
Thanks, folks. Bye.